Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacles.
My guest today is Kendra Nielson, and she has her own podcast called Fulfillment Therapy, and that's her brand. That's what she does. And she had me on hers a few weeks ago, and so we're kind of swapping. And I'm super excited to have you here. I feel like in many ways our messages align. Complacency is similar to trying to find that fulfillment. You know, there's something missing. Someone's intentionality is what's missing probably in both. But Kendra, could you kind of talk to listeners and tell them who you are and how you came to be who you are today?
Yeah, loaded question, but I will do my best. So I am a therapist. I have been very into self-improvement, just all things mental health and wellness for quite a while. I was even a personal trainer for a while, and I'm like, you know what? That's not quite it. I want to go that mental health route. And even more than that, like I never want to stop helping other people become their best selves. And I did read so many self-help books, everything I could get my hands on how to improve that mental health and wellness, that life fulfillment, and how to essentially what you're talking about, very similar messages, maybe just delivered in slightly different ways through different lenses is what we specialize in. And it does come down to that, like killing complacency, improving ourselves and finding that joy, that fulfillment, even more than just happiness. It's like becoming our best selves, becoming our higher selves. And not only for ourselves, but for our families. That's a big motive of mine, is helping my family. Everybody has a little bit of their own background and reasons why. I do share this a little bit so people understand why I'm so into it, maybe more than the average Joe. My dad and my brother die unexpectedly and tragically, both different types of addiction. And I always wonder, like, why didn't I go more into helping people through addiction? But even in therapy, I get tired of being so problem focused, tired of just seeing all the negative instead of focusing more on what you want to become, what you want to live for, living without regret, being appreciative for the life that we have, because we don't know how many days that we have. And I saw that with my family. And especially after my brother died, years after my dad died, I realized no day is guaranteed. And I want to make sure I live it fully. And I want to make sure that I'm the kind of parent and person that I say I'm going to be. And now, do I always succeed at that every day? No, but I really try to do my best. And so that's how I arrived where I am today.
Do you think that, I mean, as you were talking about not wanting to be problem focused, don't you think that kind of stems from, I mean, when we're problem focused, we're focused on the past, right? But when we're wanting to improve tomorrow, that forces us to be future focused. And I think that's key, because we fix the past, right? We can only mend it by maybe working through some things, but we can't change it. What's done is done. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that part of your motivation for not wanting to focus on the problem?
There are some things that we can do, like trauma work, trauma therapy. I don't even love the way that they call it that. I wish it was called like adverse life experiences therapy. Like being same thing, we get stuck a lot of times being too focused on being victims. And so I hope I answer your question correctly here. You're right. We cannot change the past. And there is a necessary step before healing. I think there is this fine line, like there is with everything. And sometimes we get caught up like in trying to better ourselves. We get caught up in the hustle culture and doing, which there's a big part of that I absolutely love. And there's this fine line that, are we running? Are we hustling too much that we are not healing those underlying issues that often did happen in the past? So that's a big part of what I do as well, is like slowing down enough to really address those root causes that are causing you to get triggered and reactive. But if you do not really get still and heal those parts and like acknowledge that those needs that you had as a child, that inner child, and do some of that work, you're just going to be white knuckling it, just like an addiction. Like you are just going to keep going back to these negative coping mechanisms. So it's important to address those things in the past, not get stuck there. Because usually the past, if we focus too much on that, that's depression. Yes. If we focus too much on the future, that can create anxiety. So it's like this ability to kind of live in both, that balance that we're looking for. And I do love the future. I'm right there with you, Marty, but also not running away from the past and burying things either.
Sure. At times, I think I can be too future focused and I'm not present enough to maybe celebrate the wins. You know, there's went after this goal and I hit it. And instead of like being celebratory and present, I'm like, next goal. So that's a trap I would say I fall into.
Yeah.
Is not slowing down enough to be present. Talk to me about your journey, if you don't mind, about your dad and your brother. How did the fulfillment therapy kind of come? Kind of sounds like that kind of came as a result of that. But did you use these principles through this, or was that
Yeah.
kind of the awakening for you?
It actually came directly after my brother's death. Again, it was just, I think because I was so young when my dad died, I was like in my formative years, very important time to have this stable, secure relationship with your family. I had 6 siblings at the time, and my dad disappeared for a while. We couldn't find him. And during that time, my mom found out she was pregnant with her 7th child. And he was a great father, wonderful man, and very playful and present, just what you would hope for from a father. And naturally, when they found out that he had passed in an accident, it completely changed my life. Like in a lot of ways at that point, I felt like I was an orphan. My mom went into what I now see was probably deep depression. I mean, she had no education. She had 7 young children. Well, she was about to. She was pregnant. I lost my dad. Nobody ever talked about it because of the shame surrounding the addictive parts of it that will take too long to go into.
Mm-hmm.
But so I never processed anything. Like we just talked about all of this. Obviously, I didn't. I was a young child. It wasn't modeled for me how to grieve, how to manage these things. So it was just shoved down, and I learned how to fend for myself. So I became, like most high performers, it usually stems from some sort of adverse life experience. I became very competent at taking care of my own needs, even as a young child. Sort of worked for many years. I figured it out. And in college, I became like very driven because I had this like underlying thing that I'd never healed, and it was fuel for me. But then when my brother died, it really made me come face to face with these things that had been these family patterns, generational patterns that had not been addressed and healed. And I decided that things needed to change. Like it was too many people were hurting, and there was too much that I wanted to do with my life to keep living in fear. And I didn't even think that I was until I lost 2 people, and it brought up all that other stuff in the past. And so I did a bunch of therapy. I did a bunch of schooling. I did anything that I could to start changing those patterns again, not as much for me, but for my children, because I was like, this is not going to go on to the 3rd and 4th generation anymore. It stops with me. Now, am I completely successful again? Like, no, not always, but my husband's also a therapist. So my kids and I have a lot of conversations about these things, and they talk like little therapists, and it makes me pretty happy actually that they're managing these things in better ways than maybe I ever did, so that they can live more fulfilling lives themselves.
Curious about your siblings. How have your other siblings processed and come out of this? Because they've all lost 2 close people as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. And part of the reason I also like therapy, because my dad's family and my mom's family, they all come from large families as well. And I liked to observe. I was an observer from a young age, how everybody handled similar situations.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so interesting about this
Everyone's
work.
different.
Everybody's different, but also like we have so much more control than we realize of our own life. And we can either choose to be a victim or an owner. And I don't think many of us handled it very well. Some of it like might have been culturally, they look like they were handling it really well, like becoming high performers and being really driven. But underneath the surface, like substance use, those types of things to manage that pain and to silence those demons inside. And ultimately, a lot of them have not really thrived in the way that I wanted for them. Now, they've done the best they could knowing what they know, but I would like to see all of us take that a step further even. That's the driven part for me. But there has been a lot of growth. But I would say most of that growth came later on as they realized the same thing, how it's impacting their families, or how the past is still present when you don't address some of those things.
I was just kind of picking at it. My wife lost both her parents. They were like 57, 58 or something like that when they both passed. And it was from cancer. It was hard. I don't want to say it wasn't hard, but it wasn't maybe like your situation. But your point about how, and she has 3 siblings, so there's 4 of them. But yeah, how they have all handled that is uniquely different among all of them, because some of them want to, go to the graveside on Mother's Day or whatever. And some of them want to just pretend. I say pretend. I feel like that it's nothing happened. So it is interesting to see how people handle adversity differently. And I think it's interesting. Are all your siblings high achievers? Have they all? Is that a common thing, Kendra, among people that have maybe hardships at a younger age that they will be able to thrive more in an adult life because they know how to stuff and grit their teeth and struggle through it.
Often, but not always. Then there's some of those that will turn to some sort of adverse or maladaptive thing, like coping
Sure.
mechanism, like drinking,
Okay.
drugs, those types of things, or even screens, something less terrible, or
Okay.
isolation. Like we've all done some level of those, but yeah, I would say there's a good mix with the 7 of us. I do think that my brother died in somewhat a direct result of how that was all handled. Like I'm not blaming it on that, but not healing from all of
Okay.
that had
I see. Yeah.
happened. But you were saying how in your wife's experience about that, like my brothers, they didn't ever want to discuss my dad's death, or like what
Mm,
they would say with my sisters, why do you guys always want to talk about this? But especially women, not always, but they want to process verbally. And that's how we did it. And they're like, no, you just shove it down, you put the lid on, you don't revisit it. But we also know what that does long term. Feelings buried alive never die. And a lot of times it causes, well, I would say most times it caused more problems.
yeah.
Now, that's not saying you talk about it to death and you get stuck in that. I think sometimes we did. We talked about it too much, related with it too much, and it became so much of our story that we stopped building a newer, better future and just were over focused on the past. So that is, again, that balance that I was talking about. So yeah, it can really go both ways. It really just depends on the person. That's why I love learning and hearing about high achievers, but I wish I could hear the therapist in me is like, I want to hear the background and I want to hear
Mm,
behind closed doors how they're really coping. What are their relationships really like? How much are they scrambling? How much are they avoiding? And that's the part you don't really hear about these really successful people, because like I've had a lot of that are my clients, for example, and they tell me, they're like, I'm nervous that by doing therapy, my superpower will go away of like this high achieving
mm,
scramble because I need this. Like, this is my business, this is my whatever. But
mhm.
really, truly, are you the happiest when you're constantly such a go, go, go and scrambling and not being present with your family or other loved ones? Truly, I mean, you tell me, Marty, when are you the happiest?
Yeah, this makes me think. I got into ultra running a couple years ago, and
Yeah.
I was actually kind of good. I'm kind of hurt right now. I could get back into it. But I realized that the best ultra runners, I think, have a lot of hurt, and they're comfortable with the pain because they've been in pain in their life. And I almost probably similar in other things, but I specifically saw it in that because what happens in ultra running is you get 3, 4, 5 miles into a run and you're still going. Like you're in a different world with pain. And it's just, you almost enjoy it maybe. I've never really talked to anyone about this, so maybe be my therapist. But I realized like, I think that the best ultra runners probably have some really deep wounds that they're using the running as a drug. And it's its own substance, but it's its own addiction. And if they're not doing it, like on number one, they're grumpy. But the other thing is they need that and they almost enjoy the hardship of it. Whereas other people are like, I'm not gonna keep going hard. I'm gonna walk. But anyway, and I don't know if there's even any truth to that. I know for myself, like I have some wounds and I've just buried. That was my and still is. I just pretend it doesn't exist. But in reflecting on running, I've realized that maybe that was my drug.
Yeah. And we all have them, right? Like some of them are more maladaptive or bad, even though I don't like to moralize it, than others. Some are more socially acceptable. So like you often get a pat on the back for running, or for, in my case, productivity. Like that's often my drug of choice. And it feels so good. And I get a lot of validation from people. But you ask my family about it in my not so shining moments. And they're like, no, I wish mom would slow down. Maybe I wish Marty wouldn't run so much, or whoever, and that's why our loved ones are such a good gauge of like, is this a healthy balance? Is this something that we're going to live with regret later on? Like, yes or no. When I'm doing an honest inventory, I know that there are times when I've definitely ran faster than I should have, symbolically here.
Yes.
But I am this second stage of life. I feel like I'm course correcting a little more, where I'm offering more space to ponder, to think, to pause before I jump into the next thing. Because if I were just left to myself and I wasn't responsible for anyone, I can tell you I'd have multiple PhDs and I would have a lot of things going and I would have been to every country in the world. Like I wouldn't have stopped. But I am so grateful for other people surrounding me that are like, no, there's a bigger picture here, and they help me see it. But I want to go back to what you're saying. You think that these ultra marathon runners are
Yeah, ultra runners.
Yeah, that they enjoy the pain. Well, I was actually having a conversation about this with my brother. He's a big marathon runner, like Boston Marathon. He's awesome. And he said that he'll end a lot of his runs, I don't know how many of them, but just like sobbing because like of the pain is like so intense. But same thing, it's like addicting. And just like watching that sometimes, I'm like, or any client or other people, I'm like, there's some level of processing here that might be good, like getting all of this out. But there's another part that like pushing yourself to such extremes in that way, that drug, that addiction absolutely can be adverse thing, like a unhealthy way to cope, instead of just say like getting a therapist or something like that. Any other way, it doesn't even have to be a therapist, but to work through those things instead of like punishing yourself.
Have you ever had this conversation with your brother? Have you ever connected the two?
Yes, to be respectful of that, the fact this is public, I'll try to say minimal, but there's only so much people are receptive to, especially when
Sure.
you're a sibling and you're a therapist. So I
No,
have to
I
be
get
very
it.
careful about the therapist
I get
role.
it. I get it completely, Kendra. I've got 9 siblings, so I understand the big family thing
So, yeah,
and all
some of
that.
them I can speak very openly, and he probably would be more open, but I've learned through experience that people like a doctor. People don't want you to be their doctor if you're a
Yes,
doctor. They just want
yes,
you to go to their doctor.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree. I did not expect this for us to talk about all this today. One more thing I want to notate. I read a book last year called How We Love, something Yokovets. It's really good. I mean, you would probably like it because I know you do coaching with marriages as well. And it's a marriage book, but they believe there's different styles on how you love. And it's based on chapter 2 talks about one question. And the question is, how were you comforted as a kid? And based on your answer to that is you will take on different styles. Like there's the avoider, the controller, the vacillator, and the pleaser. And then that goes into your marriage. And their theory, their goal is exactly how you started the show. Like you wanted to break the cycle for your kids. And that is where their goal is to help you do better so that your kids will be a complete comforter or something like that. But it's really good because they give you the tools. But what I wanted to say is when I started that book, I knew immediately, Kendra, it was going to be good. It was going to make me go back. And so I called my sister right below me, who was super close growing up. And we're still close, but it's just, not the same. And I said, Amy Beth, will you read this book with me? And she did. And she finished it. I finished it. We had this long conversation about it because it was so good at forcing us to ask that question, forced us to reflect and, process and forgive and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But
that sounds amazing that you included her.
But you should check it out. Tell everyone it was my 2025 book of the year. It's an older book. It's 20 years old, maybe 25. How We Love.
It does sound familiar. I wonder if I've read it in the past. But what I hear you saying, they're probably talking about like attachment theory and creating a secure attachment. And like how our caregivers, we bonded with them, how we attach to them, and how that affects our current relationships. And it is, whenever I reread those things, whenever I examine my own attachments, I'm like, oh yeah, this absolutely impacts like my marriage and how I respond to my kids and everything. So I want to say that I have, but it's been too long. I'll have to review it.
It's a big book. It's almost, in my opinion, it's almost annoying with so many case studies, but you get to see yourself so many times.
Was this by a couple by any chance?
Yes, they're a couple.
Okay. Yeah. I think I have read it though, but it's been like 8 years or something.
It was really good for me. Talk to me about, you've got a couple courses. One is Mend Your Marriage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about that because I feel like as adults, that's a big part of our life is marriage. And a lot of this fulfillment therapy, in my opinion, if our marriage is strong, like it just makes life a lot stronger. So could you talk to listeners a little bit about some tools with that or what that's all about?
For sure. I like to pair them, but ultimately, like I love like holistic health. It's important to not neglect any area. Everybody's like, you have to focus on this one thing in business. But I was like, it really comes down to 3 things that I care most about. And that's your personal life, like really making sure you're focusing on improving you so you can improve your family. And then it's marriage and parenting. Like those are the 3 things that are going to really bring you the most joy if you kind of revamp them. So I have those 3 courses and then some other ones, but that's just that, like, okay, let's focus on ourselves. Let's focus on our marriage. Let's focus on the parenting, kind of how to do it in step-by-step ways. Like there's a lot of ways you can go about any of those things. And just through my lens of being a therapist, okay, what are the biggest areas that come up? The most tools I can give you in a course instead of just therapy for those that just don't want to do therapy. And I'm going to just give you all the things that I can. I'm going to over deliver and let you kind of choose what is going to be most beneficial for you, from exercises to psychoeducation, different things like videos, assignments, all of that, some accountability. And things to do together in your marriage or with your family. And like, okay, this is what you can do to take your life to the next level. And that's exactly your messaging, Marty, is what I'm all about. Like, do we really want to sit complacency? Or are we going to reach the end of our lives and be so excited? I mean, in the scheme of our life, watch like 900 plus shows, probably way more than 900, and, spend thousands upon thousands of hours on our phone, this little stupid device? Or are we going to be fulfilled because like we really leaned in to become who we were made to become? And I think we live in this culture that's been so deadened, like we're these zombies, it feels like, trying not to be dramatic here. But often when I look around, I do feel like we're all kind of asleep in so many ways.
Yes.
And it's heartbreaking. And I want to help people get out of that feeling so stuck, especially because so many of those things that they're struggling with, they're relatively simple fixes. Marty, I can't tell you how devastating that is, especially in marriages. I do couples counseling, but I even prefer doing one-on-one with the couples for the majority of it. Is there's such simple fixes to help them through things that then will help their family and beyond. But so many of them come to me and say something along the lines of, well, if I need to see you, then we're too far gone and there's no hope. Any work that you do for anything is preventative. It's helping it become better. It's strengthening it. And you apply it to the gym. Like, it's a terrible, like if you apply that same logic to the gym, that would be so silly. Like, well, if I have to go to the gym, then there's no use. Like it's too far gone. Like, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't make sense in any other argument. And yet we still feel that way in so many ways. Like, how much time are we putting into it?
Don't you think it's because in their mind they framed it to the point that they don't need help until it's the end?
Yeah, sadly. And I know there's reasons for all of that. Like, I do have empathy for some of for their outlook on that. But it's just a small paradigm shift, checking your mindset, getting out of that space, and instead, like, how am I going to build something instead of just watch it crumble around me? And like, it's all about being proactive and building something better. And most of us just don't want to put in the work sometimes.
I think sometimes it's being the first to love. Like, we want to just be the recipient, but be the guy that goes out first and makes the coffee or makes the bed or, gives the hug or does the big greeting. We don't always have to be the recipient.
Yeah. Honestly, my husband I would like to think I'm a good person, but he's like pretty humble and great. It takes me, like, I have maybe a little bit harder heart than he does. And he's often the one that beats me to it a little bit. And I always appreciate that about him. Sometimes you just have to be the bigger person while the other person catches up. And hopefully you can leapfrog a little bit. I mean, maybe you have a different experience, Marty, but the most refining things in my life have been my marriage and parenting. Like, it's so easy to be a little bit blind to the things you need to work on without those other people telling you some things you maybe need to buffer or improve a little bit more,
They see you on your good days and bad days, and they love you. And so they're going to speak the best truth.
Yeah.
Have you read The Regrets of the Dying?
I haven't.
It was an old, I think she did it as a blog first, and it turned into a book. You could probably read the blog and get the gist of the book. But it's really thought-provoking. It's really good in regards to what you said earlier made me think about that, how we're just wandering around as zombies. Like, we all know the things that we're going to regret. So build it now. Like, you want to have a good marriage, like, do the thing. Like, how hard is it to send a text to your spouse and say, thanks for making supper last night? Or just want to say, I appreciate you, or I love you. I mean, it literally takes no time, but we don't do it. And if you did that one time a day, like one text, I love you, once a day, it would take you less than 15 seconds. And in a year, your spouse would hear it 100 or 365 times, but we don't do it.
I love those. Yeah. It was James Clear that talked about if you do just 1% better every day. What is the ratio? Do you remember this?
I don't know who said that, but it's profound.
I think it was like 37 or 33% better by the end of the year, just like a tiny little micro adjustment.
In fitness, when in the gym, I mean, you were a trainer, you would see that. You would see somebody who can't hardly move their body, and pretty soon they go from walking to running or whatever. And it's huge compound effect. But we can have the same thing in our marriages and in our jobs, I believe, all of life. Like, but it's that intentionality. It's the pursuit of that fulfillment.
I love the word intentionality. It's really what I talk about a lot.
Talk to me real quick about, you focus on three things: personal, marriage, and parenting. Do they need to come in that order?
That's a good question. Any gains that you're working on are going to help, but it's such an overused visual, but it really does help people understand. It's a whole airplane mask concept thing, the oxygen. If you don't start focusing on you first, it's often a little harder in the other ways, it definitely can still work. Anything that you're doing for personal growth is going to affect all those other areas of your life. And I do feel like it starts with you. So coming in to a therapist, doing whatever you can. One thing that I learned a lot from, my mom remarried a man that was not so, he had some issues after my dad passed away several years later. And he was just very angry. And he would often point fingers over and over, just so angry, like you, always use this you language. And from watching that for 12 years, I realized that I never wanted to be like that. And sometimes I do get stuck in it and go back to that. But we're never going to be happy if we try to control rage at others, but we turn that around and like look in the mirror, like, okay, I can't control my stepdad, but what can I control about myself? How can I change my situation instead of blaming everyone else? And we all know victims, and it's infuriating, but it's a lot harder to identify in ourselves. Like when we're above and below that line where we slip into, okay, am I a victim? Am I an owner? Am I taking accountability? Am I taking ownership for what I can do to change my side of the street and stop being so ultra focused on their fault, putting blame on other people's shoulders? Because I see that all the time in couples counseling, for example. And they just want to focus so much on how it was the other person when it is resolved so quickly. When you can stop and say like, okay, we hear you. We're seeing these same things here. Let's collaborate. But ultimately we both have a side. Even if it was primarily one person, there is something that you could have done to make the situation better. And I don't know why, but that is so hard for most people to see.
Jim Rohn talked a lot about that. I don't know if you ever follow. He was one of the early self-help guys, but he talked about that. Yes. You have to take care of you. And I loved your analogy of the oxygen mask, because I was in an airplane recently, and they talked about it. And I thought, oh, that's so good. That's so Jim Rohn. That's what honestly I thought. But yeah, you got to put it on first, and then you're in a position where you can help others. But if you don't have some of your issues, some of your baggage, some of your things worked through, then it's going to be hard to be a good lover or a good parent to those around you. Talk to me about how you have applied some of this to your kids.
Which part? I feel like that we've talked about a lot.
I guess you talked earlier about your kids growing up kind of as, I want to say, like
little therapists or something like that.
Yeah, like little therapists. I want to say therapist kids, but like preacher's kids. But is this the culture in the home? And how old are your kids?
Yeah, my oldest just went to college, so she's 18, and it's her first year. She's finishing it up. And my second oldest is 15, and then I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, and then we have an exchange student who is 16.
Okay, I mean, you're at the point. My oldest is 22, and I would say you're at the point, Kendra, where you are going to start seeing the fruit. Your daughter is going to start showing everything that you've raised her. It's going to come out because it's going to be her world. And so you're at an exciting time, but also scary, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What are some tools that you have done for your kids that the listeners could benefit from, just as far as making them more complete in themselves so that they are impactful to the world?
Let's see if I can answer that concisely for you. I stopped being so unkind to myself. I started to have more grace for myself. And instead of shaming myself and getting into that space of like, I'm such a bad mom, why did I do that? I started to have more compassion and empathy and just got curious. So when there would be something that went wrong with my kids, I lost my patience, I lost my cool. The first thing was to start with curiosity and be like, okay, this is information. What do I do with it? The second thing I think is taking more ownership, like I talked about. There was a time, because I grew up not seeing that modeled very well with my stepdad, or I was very defensive because he would always point fingers at me, that it was hard to hear negative. And through my husband's modeling and other things, I started to realize like, okay, no, I can course correct here. And I had to learn at a later age, proper apologies. I had to learn how to make restitution, conflict resolution. I feel like that is one of the things we rarely talk about that is so huge that most adults do not know how to do, and it is ridiculous. So everybody in the world, please learn about conflict resolution. I cannot tell you how many adults like avoid and hide and act like toddlers. It is so frustrating.
All the time.
But anyway, yeah. So I learned that. There's hundreds of YouTube videos. You can go check out all of it, my podcast, anything on conflict resolution. So I started to do that, and I started to validate what they were experiencing when I messed up. Hey, I'm sorry for my part in this. I'm sorry that mom yelled at you. I'm sorry that I didn't take a break to calm down. And I bet you felt frustrated, abandoned. I bet you were angry with me even. So validating that and then sharing their experience, like how you hear them, you see them. So I name it the fears steps. And I talk about this a lot. I just created that acronym so people better understand. This will hopefully help your listeners, but this is from the Gottmans and I just named it my own thing so people could remember. So share your feelings, your experience, then your activators or your triggers. Like I was triggered, I was activated, I was flooded because of this, because you can share your side of the street too.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take responsibility for your part. That's where you're like, I'm so sorry for my part that I did A, B, and C. And then the part that we often skip to is the strategy at the end, the plan. At that point, you're like, I promise that so if I'm talking to my kids or my husband, when I start to feel myself getting flooded, I'm going to take 5 minutes or I'm going to take an hour. I'm going to think things through so that I don't do something I regret. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to make amends or whatever it might be. So you take some responsibility and make that plan. And most of us skip those steps. And everything I'm saying, I don't want to give you too much information here, but I would say use the fears steps that I just shared. Learn to take more ownership. Give yourself, like, be more curious instead of living in that shame space. And those are the things. And as I've done that, I've modeled for my kids how to do it. So like the other day, my son came to me, he's just 10 and he's like, Mom, I feel like you're not letting me feel my feelings. And when I get angry, you get frustrated with me. And he just like the way that he was breaking it down and talking to me, I was like, oh, that's so sweet. Like I've done my job. And he was right. Absolutely right. And he called me out and I want him to be able to do that. And he did it in a respectful way. And I apologized and made amends and we worked through it. But before, maybe earlier, Mom wouldn't have done that quite so well. A long-winded response, but hopefully that helps.
My 12-year-old called me out last night and it was the same thing. And I just said, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry I did that because it was something in the past. But yeah, being in a position where I liked your word ownership, because ownership, I think, is pivotal in all of this. Whether you're struggling with something tragic that happened or your marriage or your parenting, like we have to take ownership of our responsibility because a lot of times when we don't, that's when we start to finger point and it's someone else's fault. So I think that's powerful. As you take ownership, yeah, I think you're right. You get to model that. And then, because that's what we want from our kids, we want them to have ownership and responsibility. And so that sounds great. I'm sure your kids have a bright future because of that.
I'm hoping. I'm very hopeful. They seem like they're doing well.
That's good. Kendra, what are you doing right now that your future self will thank you for down the road?
There's like so many things that I would put in there. I would say, I don't know if you've read Miracle Morning. I read this a while ago, but it still stays with me by Hal Elrod.
I have not.
Oh, you have not?
But mostly because I'm like a 4:35 o'clock guy. So I'm like, I already got that book down. I'll do it for you.
You've read variations of all this kind of thing. I've read him in many books, but I always love listening to them. But he talks about savers. Maybe you've heard about that. But it reminds me of when I was getting my graduate degree, and they were like, "There's these key things. If you ever deviate from, you'll never be as good of a counselor." And it's like savers is like for personal life. If you ever deviate from this, you're never going to thrive as much as you could. And it does go back to that. And it sounds like such a silly elementary answer, but I could attribute most of my success to that. And that acronym stands for silence, affirmations, visualizations, exercise, reading, and scribing. And I would say I do all of that mostly in the morning in some shape or form. And last night I was at book club. It's group therapy, really. We've been meeting for like over a decade. And that's the one night that we always come home really late. Every time afterwards, I'm like, I hate the way it feels to get off track with like a routine and a schedule because I just do not feel the same. I don't get up really early and exercise and move and have that time to ponder. I just like go right into the day and it just
You're playing
sets
catch
me
up all
off.
day.
Yeah. And I don't like that. And there's times when it's okay. Obviously, like situationally, you can't always do this one thing. But mostly I nail this almost every single day. And the part that I like the most, this part of my life that my future self will definitely thank me for, is the slowing down enough to write and ponder and read. Like I pray during this time. I read scriptures. Sometimes it's shorter than others, but where those insights, inspiration, guidance, or whatever you want to call it, come, those strokes of ideas. And that's when I have thoughts on how to be a better mother and parent and friend. That's when I am reminded about other people that need attention and help, where when I'm going, I don't even think about it. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, that's powerful. Okay, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would you tell Miss Kendra?
These are hard questions for a therapist. because I have so much material. I would probably, this sounds maybe cheesy to you, but from a therapist, I just do these visualizations all the time, this trauma therapy with my clients on this. Instead of saying things as much, I would just like hold her and just be so tender with her and be there for her. And I would just help her realize that things are going to turn out okay and that she doesn't need to scramble for worth and doing all of these things, but give her more hope in the future and belief in herself because she's going to get through it all. So I think, yeah, hope.
My homework for you is go do that for your daughter. Go give your daughter hope. Tell her how much she can conquer the world. Like she probably needs it.
That's great homework. I love that.
What is a favorite quote or book? I know you probably have a bunch. If you were stranded on a desert island and had one book or one quote to ponder, what would it be?
Oh, that's rough. Because are you speaking to a therapist, Kendra, or normal Kendra?
I don't know. Or maybe there's a quote that's just been a good, solid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know fully your whole audience, but I'm a God girl. It would have to be scripture for me. Something like all of these things are great, but ultimately, like what is going to make me my best self? And that's
truth.
The word of God. It would have to be. If that's all you have for decades, yeah. I mean, hopefully I'd have like volumes of things all around me, but I only got one.
Do you have a favorite verse?
Ooh, also, you have really good questions that I definitely should have prepped for.
There's too many good ones.
Yes, I'm one of those people that if you ask me my favorite food, I'm like, can I list 3 million?
Mm-hmm.
Because I appreciate so many things. But yeah, I don't have one that stands out at the moment to me, but just that general feeling of lightness and hope when I am reading any scriptures. And like I'm seeing the bigger picture. Like it's so easy to get hyper focused on like the small picture. And then you are able to zoom out and this like a bigger view of the world as you are reading the Bible and other. I'll have to think about that and I'll let you know.
Sounds good. And my last question is, if this is your final message, something happens today, what does Kendra want to leave with the world?
A quote that I have. Do you know who Eckhart Tolle is?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
This is just one thing that came to mind. I don't know that I could share all of it, but it's a quote by him. And he said, "Some changes look negative on the surface, but you will soon realize that space is being created in your life for something new to emerge." And I think so many of us are afraid. There's another quote, something about the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. I think we're so afraid of the hard things that we experience or the challenges that we're facing. But those are the things that bring the most beauty in the long run. Like my brother dying, my dad dying, all of these things. We all have some of these experiences, but they are the things that make us who we are and help us reach other people. And so I guess, again, it would be a message of hope, like embrace those experiences and allow them to make you shine. It wasn't until my brother died that I really did say, okay, I've lost enough time. Like I need to stop being afraid. And the time is now to move forward, to light the world in a sense, use my gifts to help and lift other people. And I think we all live in that space of fear. And will we take that next step towards becoming who we were meant to become? And I would say lean in. So I'd end with that, I think.
That's powerful. Kendra, how do people find and learn more about you?
Yeah, you can find me on fulfillmenttherapy.org or email at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org. And you can always reach out to any of those places. I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. Just check out Fulfillment Therapy.
Thank you for being on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives, to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.